I'm Julia, 34 years old, and I just discovered the ultimate betrayal at my sister's engagement party. For 7 years, I've been paying my parents' mortgage after my father's stroke left them unable to work. I sacrificed everything, lived in a cramped studio apartment, and ate ramen for dinner while ensuring they kept their home. Tonight, my mother casually announced they'd given that very house to my younger sister Megan as a wedding gift. 7 years, over $180,000, and I meant nothing. Before we dive into this heartbreaking story of family betrayal and ultimate redemption, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's also sacrificed for family only to be taken for granted? Please hit that like button if you believe family should treat each other fairly, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that will touch your heart. Let me take you back to where this all began, 7 years ago, when I thought family meant everything. 7 years ago, my life changed forever with a single phone call. My mother's hysterical voice still echoes in my memory as she sobbed about Dad's massive stroke. I was 27, just starting my career as a marketing coordinator, finally feeling independent. Within hours, I was at the hospital watching my strong father unable to speak, the left side of his body completely paralyzed. The doctors were honest but grim about his recovery prospects. Mom completely broke down, unable to cope with the sudden reversal of their comfortable life. That's when I learned their financial situation was dire. Dad's small business had been struggling, and they'd been living off credit cards for months. With him unable to work and Mom having no job skills after 30 years as a housewife, they faced losing everything, including their beloved home where we'd grown up. I'll never forget sitting in that sterile hospital cafeteria when Mom grabbed my hands and begged through tears. The mortgage was $2,100 a month, plus property taxes and insurance. They had maybe 2 months of savings left. Without hesitation, I promised to help. What else could I do? These were my parents who'd raised me, supported my education, and given me everything. My younger sister Megan was 22 and still in college, living in their funded apartment near campus. When I called to discuss splitting the financial burden, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Julia, I'm still in school. I can't work full-time like you. Besides, Mom and Dad are paying for my education. I can't jeopardize my grades." Her tone suggested I was ridiculous for even asking. That weekend, I made the hardest decision of my life. I broke my lease on my beautiful 2-bedroom apartment and moved into a 400-square-foot studio in a rough neighborhood. The difference in rent would go toward my parents' mortgage. I took a second job writing freelance marketing copy at night, often working until 3 in the morning before getting up at 6 for my day job. My boyfriend David couldn't understand why I was destroying myself. "They have other options, Julia. Your sister could get a part-time job. They could sell and downsize." But I kept seeing my father's frightened eyes and my mother's trembling hands. "Family helps family," I told him, echoing what my parents had always taught us. The sacrifices piled up quickly. I sold my car and took the bus. Lunch became a luxury I couldn't afford, so I brought peanut butter sandwiches every day. When winter came, I kept my heat off to save money, sleeping in layers of clothing under 3 blankets. My coworkers started noticing my exhaustion, and I lost a promotion to someone who could demonstrate more energy and commitment. The irony wasn't lost on me as I zombied through meetings after staying up all night to meet freelance deadlines. David tried to be supportive, but when I canceled our wedding plans indefinitely because I couldn't afford anything beyond my parents' bills, he reached his limit. "I can't watch you kill yourself for people who don't appreciate it," he said before walking away. I cried myself to sleep that night, but the next morning, I transferred another $2,100 to my parents' account. Meanwhile, Megan continued her charmed life. Her Instagram showed constant parties, spring breaks in Cancun, and shopping sprees at designer stores. All funded by our parents, who never suggested she contribute a dime. When I visited Dad during his rehabilitation, he would pat my hand with his good one and whisper hoarsely, "Don't worry, sweetheart. This house will always be yours. You're saving our home." Mom would nod, tears in her eyes. "We'll never forget this, Julia. Never." Those promises kept me going through 18-hour workdays and dinners of instant ramen. I held on to the belief that my sacrifice meant something, that I was preserving our family's foundation. After 2 years, Dad recovered more mobility than doctors expected. He could walk with a cane and speak clearly again. Mom found a part-time job at a local boutique. I brought up the possibility of them taking back the mortgage payments, but they looked stricken. "We're barely managing with medical bills," Mom said. "Just a little longer, sweetheart. We promise we'll make this right." So I continued paying, month after month, year after year. Megan graduated, though she never invited me to the ceremony. "You look too tired all the time," she said. "It would be embarrassing in photos." I discovered later she'd actually failed several classes and took an extra year to finish, all while telling our parents she was excelling. They knew but never told me, afraid I might stop supporting them if I knew how they were enabling her deception. By then, I'd paid over $70,000 toward their mortgage while living like a pauper. But family helps family, right? That's what I kept telling myself as I transferred money each month, watching my own dreams slip further away while ensuring my parents kept their home. The home they promised would always be mine. Megan's graduation should have been a turning point, but instead, it marked the beginning of an even more painful chapter. She moved back home with our parents, claiming she needed time to find the right opportunity while she job searched. 6 months passed with no employment, but somehow she had money for weekly manicures and a brand new wardrobe. When she announced her engagement to Brad, a pharmaceutical sales rep from a wealthy family, our parents reacted like she'd won the Nobel Prize. Suddenly their house transformed into Wedding Central, with Mom and Megan poring over bridal magazines and discussing flower arrangements that cost more than my monthly rent. The wedding budget they casually discussed was $80,000. $80,000, while I was still transferring $2,100 monthly to keep a roof over their heads. I'll never forget the Sunday dinner when everything started unraveling. Megan was showing off her 3-carat engagement ring, complaining about how some venues were too common for her vision. I finally snapped and asked how they were affording this extravaganza when I was still paying their mortgage. The table went silent. Megan rolled her eyes. "God, Julia, not everything is about money. Some of us actually have lives to celebrate." That's when Dad let slip that Brad's family was covering most costs, but they'd contributed $20,000 from their savings. Savings? What savings? I stared at them in disbelief. "You have $20,000 saved while I'm eating rice and beans to pay your bills?" Mom quickly intervened. "It's different money, Julia. That's from your grandmother's estate. We couldn't touch that for bills." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had money but chose to let me struggle. When I pressed further, more truth emerged. Megan hadn't graduated with honors as they'd told everyone. She'd actually been expelled from her original program for academic dishonesty and had to transfer to an easier major. The extra year of school? Not due to adding a minor as they'd claimed, but because she'd failed multiple classes while partying. They knew everything but kept funding her lifestyle, her apartment, her car, while I sacrificed everything believing they were destitute. "She needed our support to get through a difficult time," Mom explained, as if that justified everything. "You're the strong one, Julia. You've always been able to handle things. Megan needs more help." Brad's family made their disdain for me clear from our first meeting. His mother, Constance, literally looked me up and down at their country club and asked, "So you're the sister who lives in that area downtown?" Her tone suggested I might be carrying diseases from my neighborhood. When they learned I worked 2 jobs, Brad's father commented, "How industrious. Megan tells us you couldn't finish your MBA. Financial issues?" I wanted to scream that I'd given up my education to save my parents' home, but Megan quickly changed the subject to their European honeymoon plans. My parents sat there, allowing his family to treat me like the family failure while knowing exactly why I lived the way I did. The wedding planning intensified, and with it, Megan's demands. She appointed me maid of honor, then handed me a list of duties and expenses that made my head spin. The bridesmaid dress alone was $800 from a boutique that didn't offer payment plans. The bachelorette party she envisioned involved a weekend in Vegas that would cost each attendee at least $2,000. When I tried to suggest more affordable alternatives, she accused me of trying to ruin her special day. "Just because you're poor doesn't mean I should have to lower my standards," she said in front of our mother, who said nothing. When I reminded them I was poor because I was paying their mortgage, Dad actually said, "Nobody asked you to be a martyr, Julia." That night, I called David for the first time in 2 years. I needed to hear from someone who'd witnessed my sacrifices, who knew I wasn't crazy or selfish. He listened quietly as I sobbed out the whole story. "Julia," he said gently, "they're never going to appreciate what you've done. You're enabling them to use you. Your sister learned from the best." His words stung because they were true. When I asked if there was any chance for us, he sighed. "I'm seeing someone now. But honestly, Julia, even if I weren't, how do I know you won't choose them again? Your family will always come first with you." After we hung up, I sat in my cold apartment and realized I'd lost the man I loved for people who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook. The next few months blurred together in a haze of wedding preparations and family gatherings where I was simultaneously essential for paying bills and embarrassing for my lifestyle. Megan made sure to point out my old car, my outdated phone, my clearance rack clothes at every opportunity. "Maybe if you managed money better," she'd say sweetly in front of others, knowing I couldn't reveal where my money actually went without causing a scene. Brad's family started referring to me as the struggling sister, as if it were my official title. Meanwhile, I discovered Megan had been telling people I had mental health issues and problems with relationships to explain why I was still single and living poorly. My parents never corrected these lies. They needed me to keep paying their bills, but they also needed Megan to marry well. I was the sacrifice they were willing to make for their golden child's happiness. Each month when I transferred their mortgage payment, I told myself it was almost over. Once Megan was married, things would change. I had no idea how right and how wrong I would be. The real betrayal was yet to come, and it would happen in front of everyone at her engagement party. The engagement party was held at my parents' house on a perfect June evening. The same house I'd been paying for month after month, year after year. Megan had outdone herself with decorations, transforming the backyard into something from a magazine. Twinkling lights wrapped every tree, elegant white furniture replaced the old patio set, and a professional catering team served champagne and delicate appetizers. I arrived late from my second job, still in my work clothes, to find the party in full swing. Brad's family clustered together, their designer outfits making my outlet mall dress look even shabbier. I grabbed a glass of water, not champagne, and tried to blend into the background. That's when I heard my mother's voice carrying across the garden. "We're so thrilled to give Megan and Brad their wedding gift early," she announced, clinking her glass for attention. The crowd quieted, and I watched Megan's face light up with anticipation. As you all know, a home is the foundation of a strong marriage. That's why Robert and I have decided to sign over the deed to this house to Megan and Brad as they start their new life together. The words hit me like physical blows. I stood frozen, certain I'd misheard. The crowd erupted in applause while I struggled to breathe. Megan squealed and threw her arms around our parents while Brad's mother nodded approvingly. "How generous," I heard her say. "Every young couple should have such supportive parents." I pushed through the crowd, my hands shaking. "Excuse me," I said, my voice cracking. "What did you just say about the house?" Mom looked at me with mild annoyance at the interruption. "We're giving Megan the house, dear. Didn't we mention it?" The casualness of her tone made my stomach turn. "No," I managed. "You didn't mention that you're giving away the house I've been paying for." "The house I've kept from foreclosure for 7 years." The party atmosphere shifted as guests began to notice the tension. Megan's smile turned sharp. "Julia, this isn't the time or place for your dramatics." But I was past caring about propriety. "When did you decide this? When did you sign over the deed?" Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. 3 months ago. Our lawyer said it was better to do it before the wedding for tax purposes. 3 months. They'd been planning this for 3 months while I continued paying their mortgage, believing in their promises. And you didn't think to tell me? The person actually paying for this house? Brad's father stepped forward. I think there's some confusion here. Megan told us the house was already in a family trust for her. I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. A trust? I have 7 years of bank statements showing monthly transfers from my account to theirs. I've paid over $180,000 for this house. The silence that followed was deafening. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and opened my banking app. Here, I said, showing the screen to anyone who would look. Every month for 7 years. $2,100. Want to see my apartment? It's 400 square feet in a neighborhood where gunshots are normal. Want to know why I couldn't come to Christmas last year? Because I couldn't afford gas money after paying their mortgage. Megan tried to regain control. You're embarrassing yourself, Julia. You helped our parents during a tough time. That's what family does. It doesn't mean you own their house. The crowd was shifting uncomfortably, but I wasn't done. What family takes advantage of one daughter while spoiling the other? What parents promise their house will always be mine while secretly planning to give it away? Mom's face had turned red. Julia, you're making a scene. We never promised you the house. You offered to help, and we accepted. There was no contract, no agreement for repayment. The calculated coldness in her voice revealed she'd rehearsed this response, probably with a lawyer. Of course there was no contract, I said, my voice breaking. I trusted you. You're my parents. When Dad held my hand and said this house would always be mine, I believed him. When you cried and said you'd never forget my sacrifice, I believed you too. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. You were just helping family, Julia. We're grateful, but gratitude doesn't mean we owe you our house. Megan needs stability for her marriage. You're single. You don't need a house like this. That's when the final twist of the knife came. Brad's mother spoke up, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It sounds like there was a misunderstanding about expectations. Perhaps Julia assumed too much from what was simply a family helping each other through crisis. Megan nodded eagerly. Exactly. I always knew this house was meant for me. Mom and Dad told me years ago that as the one getting married and having children, I'd need it more. Julia's jealousy is really inappropriate. Years ago. They'd been planning this for years while I destroyed my health, my relationship, my life to keep their roof over their heads. I looked around at the faces watching this drama unfold. Some showed sympathy, others curiosity, but most seemed uncomfortable and eager for it to end. These people didn't know about the nights I'd gone hungry, the promotions I'd lost from exhaustion, the man I'd let walk away because I put my family first. They saw only what was presented to them, a bitter older sister making a scene at her prettier younger sister's party. Is that all I was to you? I asked my parents quietly. Just a bank account to use until Megan needed the house? Mom straightened her shoulders. Don't be dramatic, Julia. We've always loved both our daughters equally. The lie was so blatant that several guests looked away. I turned to leave, but Megan's voice stopped me. By the way, Julia, we'll still need you to cover the mortgage until after the wedding. Brad and I won't be moving in until after our honeymoon, and Mom and Dad are staying in the guest house we're building. Someone needs to maintain the payments. The audacity left me speechless. She stood there in her designer dress, surrounded by luxury I'd paid for, demanding I continue funding her life. Also, she added, as maid of honor, don't forget about the bachelorette party planning. The other bridesmaids are wondering why you haven't sent out the itinerary yet. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was complete erasure of my worth as anything beyond a source of money. I walked out of that party knowing my family was dead to me, but I had no idea they would try to destroy me even further. The real war was about to begin. The morning after the engagement party, my phone exploded with messages. Not support or apologies, but attacks. Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, sent a long text about how I'd ruined Megan's special moment with my greed and jealousy. She added, "You're 34 and single, Julia. What do you need a house for? Stop being selfish and support your sister's happiness." By noon, the family narrative had been established, and I was the villain. My cousin Beth posted on Facebook about toxic family members who can't celebrate others' joy, with several relatives commenting their agreement. Nobody mentioned the years of payments. Nobody asked for my side. The story was simple: bitter spinster sister tries to steal younger sister's rightful inheritance. My grandmother called that afternoon. I'd always been close to her, and for a moment, I felt hope. "Grandma, did you hear what happened?" I began, but she cut me off. "I heard you made a spectacle at Megan's party. I'm disappointed in you, Julia. That house belongs in the family, with someone who'll fill it with children. I'm changing my will accordingly. Everything will go to Megan now." The call ended before I could respond. 40 years of relationship destroyed by one manipulated story. I later learned Megan had visited her that morning, crying about how I'd tried to steal her home and ruin her marriage. My grandmother, already biased toward the granddaughter who visited more often because she didn't work 2 jobs, believed every word. By evening, I was removed from the family group chat. My uncle posted that it was to prevent further drama during wedding planning. I watched through social media as they continued discussing plans for the house I was still paying for. Megan posted a photo tour of her home, pointing out renovations she planned. The comments filled with congratulations and suggestions while I sat in my cramped apartment, looking at the automatic payments scheduled for next week. That's when I discovered Megan's true cruelty. She'd posted photos of my apartment on her private Instagram story, the one she thought I couldn't see. Except our cousin accidentally showed me. There was my unmade bed, my tiny kitchen, my bathroom with its cracked tile. The caption read, "This is how she lives but thinks she deserves mom and dad's house. Some people can't accept their place." The extended attacks continued for weeks. Every family member had an opinion on my behavior. My mother's childhood friend called to lecture me about honoring parents. My father's brother sent an email about how real family doesn't keep score. The church my parents attended somehow got involved, with the pastor calling to counsel me about forgiveness and letting go of material attachments. Meanwhile, Megan sent wedding updates with pointed messages. "Since you're saving so much on rent in that tiny apartment, I'm sure you can afford the $1,200 bridesmaid dress. The other girls already ordered theirs." When I didn't respond, she added me to a group chat where she'd told the other bridesmaids I was being difficult about money, as usual. Work became my only refuge, but even that was poisoned when Megan started calling my office. She told the receptionist she was concerned about my mental state and needed to check on me. My supervisor pulled me aside after the 3rd call to ask if everything was okay at home. I tried to explain without sounding insane, but how do you tell your boss your family is harassing you because you won't keep paying for a house they gave away? The stress affected my performance. I made mistakes I'd never made before, missed a crucial deadline because I was dealing with another family attack. My supervisor's patience wore thin. "Julia, you've been a good employee, but personal issues can't continue affecting your work. Consider this a warning." Then came the legal threats. My parents' lawyer, who happened to be Megan's college friend Derek, sent a formal letter. They claimed I'd been living in their house periodically over the years, using utilities and food, and that my payments were actually rent and reimbursement. The fabrication was stunning. I'd visited for holidays and Sunday dinners, nothing more. The letter demanded I continue payments through the wedding, to avoid legal action for breach of verbal contract and elderly abandonment. The fact that they were threatening to sue their own daughter while living in a house I'd saved showed how far they'd fallen. Or maybe it showed who they'd always been. The social media harassment escalated. Megan's friends, people I'd never met, found my profiles and left comments calling me pathetic, jealous, and worse. Someone created a meme from my photo with, "When you think paying bills makes you special," written across it. It spread through our extended network. My high school friends started asking what was happening. Professional contacts saw the drama. I had to lock down all my accounts, but the damage was done. Megan played victim perfectly, posting about family members who tried to destroy your happiness, and getting hundreds of supportive comments while I was painted as the unstable sister trying to ruin her wedding. Financial pressure mounted as I realized the true extent of my situation. I depleted my savings over the years, had no emergency fund, and barely survived paycheck to paycheck. The threat of legal action meant I needed a lawyer I couldn't afford. My credit cards were maxed from covering unexpected expenses while paying their mortgage. When my car broke down, I had no way to fix it. I took 3 buses to work, adding 2 hours to my daily commute. Megan posted about test driving luxury cars for her wedding exit while I calculated whether I could afford both food and bus passes that month. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was still scheduled to pay for the house where she was planning her perfect life. Everything culminated when I received the wedding invitation. Inside, Megan had included a personal note. "I know things have been tense, but I still want my sister there. Please don't ruin my day with more drama. P.S. I didn't include a +1 for you since you're single. Saves money." The casual cruelty of reminding me I was alone because I'd sacrificed my relationship for the family took my breath away. But it was the registry that broke me. She'd registered for items worth more than my yearly salary. Crystal wine glasses that cost more than my monthly food budget. A kitchen mixer priced higher than my rent. And at the bottom, a note suggesting cash gifts for their home renovation fund for the house I was still paying for. That's when I decided enough was enough. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But I'd fight with something they'd never expected, the truth. The forensic accountant I hired worked on contingency after hearing my story. Lisa Chen was a small woman with sharp eyes who'd built her reputation exposing financial abuse. "I see this more than you'd think," she said during our first meeting in her downtown office. "Family financial abuse is devastating because victims rarely fight back. Let's see what your parents have been hiding." What she uncovered over the next 3 weeks changed everything. My father's stroke, while real, had triggered substantial disability insurance payouts that began 6 months after his recovery. He'd been receiving $4,200 monthly for 6 years, none of which went toward the mortgage. My mother hadn't just worked part-time at a boutique. She'd inherited $90,000 from her sister's estate 3 years ago, carefully hidden in investment accounts. The revelations kept coming. They'd refinanced the house twice while I was paying the mortgage, pulling out equity for renovations that never happened. The money had gone toward Megan's lifestyle, including a failed boutique business they'd funded and never mentioned. They'd been collecting rent from a basement apartment in the house for 4 years, $1,200 monthly that went straight into their savings while I struggled. Most damning was the paper trail showing they'd consulted with Derek the lawyer 2 years ago about transferring the deed, meaning they'd planned this while looking me in the eye and accepting my payments. Lisa compiled everything into a comprehensive report. "Julia, they've defrauded you of over $200,000 when you include interest and opportunity cost. This is criminal." Armed with evidence, I stopped the automatic payments immediately. The bank confirmed it was canceled for the next month. Then I hired a lawyer, James Morrison, who'd handled similar cases. "Elder financial abuse goes both ways," he explained. "Your parents exploited your trust while they had the means to support themselves. We have grounds for both civil and criminal action. We filed a lawsuit for fraud, unjust enrichment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The amount sought included all payments made under false pretenses, plus damages." But I wasn't content with just legal action. These people had tried to destroy my reputation, so I decided to tell the truth publicly. I created a simple website called The Price of Being Family, where I posted the entire story with documentation. Bank statements, the forensic accounting report, screenshots of their hidden assets, recordings of voicemails where they begged for money while sitting on 6 figures in savings. I wrote everything factually, without emotion, letting the evidence speak. The final touch was a timeline showing my payments aligned with their vacations, Meghan's shopping sprees, and their investment account growth. Within hours, it went viral in our community. People who'd judged me at the engagement party suddenly saw the receipts. The narrative shifted overnight from jealous sister to exploited daughter. Local news picked up the story after a reporter found the website. Family fraud. Daughter pays parents' mortgage for 7 years while they hide assets, became the headline that changed everything. I gave one interview, calm and composed, showing the documentation on camera. The reporter verified everything with public records. My parents refused to comment, which made them look worse. Meghan tried damage control, posting about family matters being private and one-sided stories, but people had seen the evidence. The court of public opinion rendered its verdict swiftly. Their church community, which had once counseled me about forgiveness, began asking uncomfortable questions about their ethics. The wedding vendors took notice when the story hit social media. The upscale venue called Meghan to discuss concerns about the publicity. The florist, a small business owner who'd struggled herself, canceled the order citing ethical conflicts. The photographer pulled out, stating she couldn't support people who'd exploit family. Brad's family, obsessed with reputation, went into crisis mode. Constance called me directly, her previous disdain replaced with panic. "Surely we can resolve this quietly," she pleaded. "You're destroying your sister's wedding over money." I laughed. "I'm telling the truth about being defrauded. If that destroys her wedding, perhaps she should have thought about that before posting pictures mocking my poverty that she caused." My parents tried their usual manipulation tactics. Dad showed up at my apartment for the first time ever, leaning heavily on his cane for sympathy. "Julia, sweetheart, you're destroying our family. Is money really worth this?" I looked at this man who'd promised me the house would be mine while planning to give it away. "You destroyed our family when you stole from me while I sacrificed everything. Don't put this on me." Mom tried emotional warfare, leaving voicemails sobbing about her broken heart and ruined reputation. "How can you do this to the people who gave you life?" She seemed to forget she'd taken my life away year by year, payment by payment. When manipulation failed, they returned to threats, having Derek send cease and desist letters about the website. James Morrison laughed. "Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. They can't stop you from sharing documented facts." The house of cards collapsed when the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. Without my payments and with liens from various creditors surfacing, they couldn't maintain the mortgage. The paradise they'd promised Meghan turned into a nightmare of legal notices. Meghan called me for the first time in years, not to apologize but to bargain. "I'll give you partial ownership if you just pay until the wedding," she begged. "Brad's family is reconsidering everything. You're ruining my life." The entitlement even in desperation was breathtaking. "You ruined your own life by building it on theft," I replied. "Find someone else to exploit." She tried offering me 20%, then 30%, finally 50% ownership if I'd just save her wedding. Each offer showed she'd always known the house was mine morally, if not legally. The investigation revealed more victims. My parents had borrowed money from elderly church members for medical bills, while having insurance and savings. They'd taken a loan from Dad's brother for house repairs, while the house was fine, and used the money for Meghan's failed business. The pattern of deception ran deep. Those people reached out to me with their own stories, and we formed an unexpected support group. Together, we compiled evidence that turned the civil case into potential criminal charges. The prosecutor's office opened an investigation into elder financial abuse and fraud. My parents' comfortable life built on lies was crumbling, and they had only themselves to blame. My story inspired others to share similar experiences of family financial abuse. I started a support group that met weekly at the community center. Women and men who'd been exploited by parents, siblings, and children found solidarity and practical advice. We shared lawyers, accountants, and most importantly, validation that we weren't selfish for demanding justice. The local news did a follow-up story on the hidden epidemic of family financial fraud. My parents and Megan became the poster children for exploitation, their faces attached to every article about protecting yourself from family predators. The golden child who'd gotten everything wasn't looking so golden anymore. But the best was yet to come when I got the call about the house auction. The foreclosure auction was set for a Thursday morning in September. I arrived early, my lawyer beside me, to find my parents huddled with Derek on the courthouse steps. They looked older, smaller somehow, stripped of the power they'd wielded over me for so long. Mom clutched Dad's arm as if she might collapse. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Julia, please, not our home," she whispered. The irony of her calling it their home when I'd paid for it for 7 years wasn't lost on anyone. Other bidders had gathered, drawn by the story and the below-market starting price. The auctioneer began, and I raised my paddle at every increase. My parents watched in horror as their daughter bid on the home they'd stolen from her. Brad's family's abandonment of Megan had been swift and brutal. 2 weeks after the story broke, Constance had called off the engagement, citing irreconcilable differences in values. Brad, spineless to the end, had followed his mother's command. He'd even demanded the ring back, claiming it was a family heirloom. Megan fought it until his lawyer threatened to expose her credit card debt and shopping addiction in court. The same designer stores she'd haunted while I ate ramen were now sending collection notices. Without Brad's wealth or our parents' stolen funds, her carefully constructed image crumbled. The wedding venue kept the deposits, vendors sued for cancellation fees, and the girl who'd mocked my poverty was drowning in debt she'd never learned to manage. When I won the auction at 60% of market value, thanks to the liens and damage to the property's reputation, the small crowd applauded. Justice served cold but satisfying. My parents approached me afterward, Dad using his cane for genuine support now, the stress having aged him rapidly. "Where will we go?" Mom asked, as if I should care. "Aunt Carol offered you her basement," I reminded her. "The same aunt who said I was selfish and bitter. I'm sure she'll be delighted to help family." The bitterness in my voice matched theirs from years of exploitation. Derek tried one last legal intimidation, mentioning appeals and challenges. James Morrison stepped forward. "Any further harassment of my client will result in additional charges. The criminal investigation is proceeding. I suggest your clients focus on that." Over the following weeks, the family's true colors showed in spectacular fashion. Aunt Carol, faced with actually housing my parents, suddenly had space issues and health concerns that prevented their moving in. The relatives who'd attacked me for not supporting family disappeared when Mom and Dad needed actual help. The family group chat I'd been excluded from became a battlefield of blame and excuses. Screenshots leaked to me showed cousins arguing about who should take them in, each finding reasons why they couldn't. The grandmother who disinherited me in favor of Megan now faced her golden granddaughter begging for money. The family that had circled wagons against me scattered when real sacrifice was required. Megan's descent was swift and pathetic. Without her wedding, her parents' house, or her wealthy fiancé, she had nothing but debt and a ruined reputation. She moved 3 states away to escape the shame, finding work at a mall jewelry store. The irony of her selling rings to happy couples while her own engagement had imploded wasn't lost on those who knew her. She sent me increasingly desperate messages, alternating between threats and pleas. "I'll ruin you," followed hours later by, "Please, I'm your sister." I blocked her number but kept the messages for the restraining order I'd eventually need. Her social media transformed from luxury showcases to motivational quotes about surviving betrayal and rising above adversity, lacking any self-awareness about her role in creating that adversity. My parents' criminal trial became a cautionary tale in our community. They pled guilty to reduced charges to avoid jail time, receiving probation and mandatory restitution. Watching them in court, flanked by a public defender instead of their friend Derek who'd abandoned them, I felt neither satisfaction nor pity. Just emptiness where love used to live. They were ordered to pay me $50,000 in restitution over 10 years, a fraction of what they'd stolen but more than they had. Dad's disability payments would go directly to me until the debt was satisfied. Mom got a full-time job at 62, experiencing the exhaustion I'd lived with for 7 years. They moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the same rough neighborhood where I'd survived while funding their comfort. The house felt different under my ownership. I walked through rooms where I'd been made to feel less than, where my sacrifices were dismissed and my pain ignored. Every wall held memories of family dinners where they'd plotted against me while eating food bought with my money. I considered selling immediately but decided to reclaim it first. Room by room, I erased their presence. The furniture they'd left behind went to charity. Their photos went into boxes in the garage. I painted every wall, replaced every fixture, made it mine in ways it had always been through my payments. The master bedroom where they'd slept peacefully while I shivered in my unheated apartment became my home office. The dining room where Megan had mocked my poverty became a library filled with books I could finally afford. Support group members helped me move in, understanding the symbolic importance of claiming my space. We celebrated with takeout pizza in the empty living room, sitting on the floor and toasting with cheap wine. These strangers who'd become family understood what blood relatives never had: sacrifice should be honored, not exploited. Lisa Chin stopped by with a housewarming gift, a ledger she'd used to track my parents' fraud. "Frame it," she said. "Remember what you overcame." That night, I slept in my house for the first time, in a sleeping bag on the floor, and felt peace I hadn't known in 7 years. The family who'd broken me was broken themselves, scattered and struggling. I'd lost relatives but gained self-respect. It wasn't the ending anyone had planned, but it was justice. 2 years have passed since that foreclosure auction, and the house I fought to reclaim has become more than just property. It's become a symbol of resurrection. I transformed it into Phoenix House, a sanctuary not just for me but for others recovering from family financial abuse. The formal dining room where my parents plotted their betrayal now hosts weekly support group meetings. The living room that showcased Megan's engagement party serves as a consultation space where volunteer lawyers help victims understand their rights. Every corner that once held deception now pulses with truth and healing. The garden where Mom announced their ultimate betrayal blooms with flowers planted by survivors, each rose bush and lily representing someone who refused to stay victim to family exploitation. My support group evolved into a registered nonprofit called Breaking the Silence on Family Fraud. We've helped over 200 people recognize and escape financial abuse from relatives. The website that exposed my parents' deception became a resource hub with legal templates, warning signs, and survival strategies. I speak at colleges and community centers, sharing my story to prevent others from suffering in silence. The girl who once ate ramen to pay someone else's mortgage now teaches financial boundaries and self-advocacy. Local legislators invited me to testify about strengthening laws against family financial exploitation. My testimony helped pass Julia's Law, requiring written agreements for large family financial arrangements and increasing penalties for those who exploit relatives' trust. Love found me when I'd stopped looking, arriving in the form of David's return. He'd seen the news coverage and reached out, not as the man who'd left but as someone who'd grown from our shared pain. "I should have fought harder for us," he said over coffee in the kitchen he'd helped me renovate. His relationship hadn't lasted because, as he admitted, I kept comparing her to you. Not fair to anyone. We took it slowly, rebuilding on a foundation of mutual respect and hard-learned wisdom. He understood when support group meetings ran late or when I needed to help another victim at odd hours. "This is who you are," he said. "Someone who helps. I just wish your family had deserved it." We married last spring in the garden, surrounded by the chosen family I'd built from survivors and supporters. No blood relatives attended, and their absence felt like freedom. The wedding was small but profound, with Lisa Chen as my maid of honor and James Morrison walking me down the aisle. My support group sisters decorated with wildflowers and homemade touches that meant more than Megan's $80,000 fantasy ever could. David's vows acknowledged our journey. "You loved me enough to let me go when family duty called. Now I promise to stand beside you as you help others find their voice." We honeymooned locally, using money we would have spent on travel to fund legal aid for 3 group members escaping their own family fraud. That gesture meant more to both of us than any beach resort could have offered. Our life together is built on truth, sacrifice that's honored, and boundaries that protect our peace. My family's aftermath continues to ripple through their lives. Dad suffered another stroke last year, this one taking his mobility completely. The nursing home he requires costs more than his disability payments, leaving Mom working double shifts at her age. I get updates through the grapevine but maintain no contact. Megan resurfaces periodically with new schemes and desperate messages. Last Christmas, she sent a card with photos of our childhood and a note about forgiveness being divine. I donated the card to our support group's collage project about manipulation tactics. She's engaged again, to someone who doesn't know her history, and already hinting about needing family help for the wedding. The cycle continues, but without me as a victim. Some relatives have reached out, admitting they were wrong, but trust once shattered can't be glued back together with apologies that come only after consequences. Phoenix House serves a deeper purpose now. We've created a scholarship fund for young adults escaping family financial abuse, helping them establish independence without drowning in debt like I did. 3 students currently attend college with our support, free from the manipulation that would have destroyed their futures. The basement apartment my parents secretly rented now houses rotating residents fleeing financial exploitation, giving them 6 months of free housing while they rebuild. David and I expect our first child soon, and the nursery occupies what was once Megan's childhood room. We'll raise our daughter to understand that love doesn't mean enabling, that family isn't licensed to exploit, and that her worth isn't measured in what she sacrifices for others' comfort. My story ends not with revenge but with purpose. Every Thursday, when survivors gather in my dining room sharing coffee and courage, I see my pain transformed into power for others. The woman who once transferred her last dollar to parents who betrayed her now helps others recognize their worth beyond their usefulness to toxic family. The house that represented 7 years of deception stands as proof that truth prevails, even when the liars share your blood. David often says I saved myself, but that's only partially true. I saved myself by saving others, by turning personal tragedy into collective triumph. The family I lost was replaced by the community I built, and that exchange made me wealthier than any inheritance could have. What would I tell my younger self, that 27-year-old who believed family meant sacrifice without reciprocation? Family isn't about blood but about who stands by you when life gets hard. Real love doesn't demand you shrink yourself to enlarge others. Sacrifice should flow both ways, not drain one person to fill another's cup. The house my parents promised would always be mine became true in ways they never intended. It's mine not through their gift but through my fight. Every room tells a story of resilience, every wall holds strength born from struggle. When survivors leave our meetings empowered to reclaim their lives, I know my parents' betrayal birthed something beautiful. They gave their house to the wrong daughter as a wedding gift, but I transformed it into something far more valuable, a beacon of hope for those still trapped in family fraud, proof that you can rebuild after those who should love you most tear you down. Have you ever sacrificed everything for family only to discover they never valued your sacrifice? What would you do if the people you trusted most planned your exploitation while accepting your help? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please hit that like button if you believe family should treat each other with respect and honesty. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of triumph over betrayal, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their sacrifices matter, even if their family doesn't acknowledge them. Thank you for listening to my journey from exploitation to empowerment. May you find the strength to value yourself beyond what you can provide to others, and may your chosen family prove more faithful than blood ever could. Until next time, remember, the best revenge against those who tried to break you is building a life so beautiful they can only watch from afar.